Well, ladies and gentlemen, today we have one of the best souls to come out of South Utah County, Oakland Goodsell. Oaks had a phenomenal sales career already, and it's just getting started. His first rookie summer coming out, selling over 300 accounts. This past summer, surpassing 600. If we keep on that trajectory, we're expecting 12,000 accounts. 1,200. And a lot of people are calling him the current Elon Musk of.
I was gonna say 12,000, and my bank account might start looking like his.
Yeah, we're just trying to instead of 2x, we're trying to do, what's it called when they put the exponent next to the 2 or next to the number?
What do you think's the most that's like humanly possible for somebody to sell? Like 20 weeks, like 18, 20 weeks.
I'm scared to say it because I'm worried Carter's going to watch this later.
Carter's going to be like, just start shaking in his boots, and he's like, dude, what do you mean?
I can do that.
You think somebody can only sell 2,000? I'll do 3, dude.
I think what time frame are we talking? Are we talking
like if they're doing it in 5 months, like
5 months? I think 1,600 is possible. 1,600 accounts.
It's a lot, dude. Yeah, I'd say somewhere around there.
But I mean, your emotional mental health might be gone.
Yeah.
But I think that's possible.
Yeah, I'd say somewhere around there. Probably like 16.
So you heard it here first. Oakland Goodsell this year will sell 1,600 accounts.
Yeah. Yeah, of course.
No, but one of the cool things about your job is you are the pace setter. Like, I feel like the entire company kind of like, wherever you're at, they're kind of like, that's what we're chasing. And I mean, I saw that all going out through last summer. But kind of for you, where are you looking to put that flag down this next year?
Like, what's my goal, or what do you mean?
Yeah, I mean, what's your goal? What's the kind of like current layout of like day-to-day plans, kind of moving into that?
I remember being like, when I got back from the summer, I was like, I'm not gonna tell anyone what my goal is this year, because it stressed me out so much last year because everybody knew. But I don't care now. I want to do like around 800 or so accounts, and like I want to do at least 700,000 in revenue. So it's a little bit of a jump, like coming from like doing 425,000 this last year. I think just like increasing the contract value, and then it was my first summer managing last year, so just having a little bit better idea of what I'm doing. Like if I just sell how I did at my best stints last year, like my best month, then that's about where I'll land at. So that's my goal for this coming year.
And where do you think the extra room is going to come in? Now, obviously, the top 0.01% of like people that already do it. But like, if I'm watching this and I've seen how you sold and seen how like you're going to continue to sell, like where do you think that room comes from? Like where are the changes that are going to be made in order to make that happen?
It's kind of like gets old. Everybody talks about it, and it's kind of corny. But it's like at the end of the day, like I think it's like kind of a heart thing, and it's how much you want it, how much more you're willing to give. Because even this year, like I had a really big summer, but like there was days, especially early on, where I was just like, and I was knocking, but all I wanted to do, all I want to do is just go like back to the apartment, lay on the couch, and like watch South Park.
Order some chicken macani.
I just want to go to Torchy's, and I want to go to BJ's and get some like nachos. And I think that's a big thing. It's all about focus. Like once I stopped, like I was selling like at the beginning of the summer, I was kind of frustrated. I was like, I don't feel like I'm selling like that much more than I was as a rookie. And like my best week ever as a rookie like was like 27 accounts. It was probably like 13 or 14,000 in revenue. And up to this point, like of the summer, I'd kept doing like 29 and 29 over and over again, and like for the first couple weeks of the summer, and I was like, I still haven't broken 30. Like I'm a second year rep. I was expecting to just come out and just be the best to ever do this. And what really changed was like I started I think I just dialed in mentally. Like I was spending the same amount of time on the doors. I was really saying the same things, but once I just started to think about become more intentional at every door, it's all of a sudden like I had a couple 29 weeks at the beginning of the summer, then I had a bad week where I sold like 18, and I was just pissed. I came home for my buddy's wedding, and I went back and I sold 51 the next week, and then 48 the week after that, and kind of stayed in the like high 30s, 40s range for the rest of the summer in terms of accounts. And it was like somewhere between like 25 to 35K in revenue each week from then on. Some weeks were worse, some weeks were better, but and I think the biggest difference there was like I was thinking more intentionally throughout the whole day. Like I wasn't worrying about like, oh, what happened yesterday? What's going to happen tomorrow? It was more just like, let's live in the moment. Let's think about what's happening now and just be here with this person that I'm talking to, try to close them, and then I'll worry about the next person on the next door, and we'll think about everything else later on. Because at the beginning of the summer, I really do remember being like, I just want to watch like South Park reels on my phone. Like I want to go home. Like I'm tired. Like I started a little early. I was like, I'm the only one out here, and I would still sell. I would still sell fine. But it's once I just wasn't thinking about those things. Or my first summer, I would be like thinking about girls, or I'd be thinking about like the playoffs, the NBA playoffs, and I'd still sell fine because I was still like 80% there, 70% there. But once you get into that like 95% like focus range, you can just sell like way more. So I think that's a big thing that I'll change. Area management is something that I improved on throughout the summer. Is another big thing to change. But I think in terms of like pitching, it's just staying sharp at this point, just adding like little things. I don't think that's like the main adjustment, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Going back to what you were saying about when you went home for your buddy's wedding, I remember the phone call that we had as you were like heading back out. And we were kind of talking about like making sure that like the summer was going to be what you wanted it to be and all that stuff. And I remember the desire that was coming from the other end of that phone call that I just heard in your voice.
Yeah.
I knew you were going to figure it out and you were going to make it happen. And
I remember too, like, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I remember when I went out to area the next day, I was like called you and I was just like super stressed, and I was like, oh, I'm having some front end cancels and I'm worried about all these things. And you just told me, you were like, just live like in the moment right now. Don't worry about anything else. And I remember for the first time ever, I told myself, like, I was like, if I don't get one today, which hadn't happened like since like my second day ever selling, like there's never been a day where I haven't made money and put accounts on the board and put revenue up. I was like, but if I don't get one, or if I sell 12, like, it doesn't matter. I'm just going to go do what I got to do. And I went and I sold 3 accounts in my first hood. I got like a soliciting ticket. I was like, oh, dude, I got hot. 30 minutes in, I had 3 deals, and I was like, get the soliciting ticket. This cop pulls up on me, and I'm like, dude, like, this is gonna ruin my whole day. And then I sold 9 more at the end of by the end of that day. So I finished with 12, and I was like, to that point, it was like my highest revenuing day ever. Like I beat it a couple times after, but it just made such a difference when I just realized I'm gonna take a little bit of the pressure off and just focus on just what I'm doing right then. Sorry, I cut you off a second ago though.
I'm actually so glad you did. Living in the moment, it's so tough sometimes, and it's easier to like talk about it like when we're here on a podcast, but people that can get really good at dedicating all of their energy to whatever's in front of their face, you're going to surpass so many other people, because 99.99% of people can't. And I think unlocking that's huge for anybody. And I mean, with cell phones now and with so many things that kind of pull you out of that sphere, just naturally, like we live in a world where people are always divided on like what their attention is. But I saw that big change in you. Like I could tell after that moment, you were harder to get a hold of during the day. You were more focused on like what you were doing between the hours of like 1 and like 9. I rarely heard from you. And prior to that, we would talk more and stuff like that. But I think there was a big thing that changed. You were just like, hey, I'm going to be here and be in this moment.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of times people don't realize that the difference between them and whoever's outperforming them isn't always like, it's usually not skill. It's a lot of times it's not even like, people want to tell you it's just like, oh, I just work harder. I work harder. Like for me, I never thought that was the case. I thought I always like worked as hard as most people, or harder than most people. I think a lot of times that really is the difference. It's like, how focused can you be? Like how much more focused are these like really high performing businessmen or salesmen than the people that are under them. And I think there is some capability differences, but like especially for higher performers, I think that's the biggest difference by far, is like how locked in, how dialed can you be.
And speaking on just the subject of like high performers and stuff, in order to jump from the different places you've jumped to and stuff like that, if you could go back in time and kind of look at like from your first summer to your second summer, what do you think changed the most in between that time to kind of like maximize like what went into last year?
Like in the off season?
In the off season, but also in the season itself.
Yeah. Well, I started selling like my first year. I came off my mission and I came in and I was nervous. I was like, am I going to be able to do this? And I started hot, and like the first couple weeks like went really well. And like I started way hotter than the rest of the rookies in our office and in the company. And by the time I'd sold 100 accounts, I like thought that I was like the man. Like I thought I was like a veteran. And I remember being like, I remember us going into like the new sales pad when we transitioned, when some of the guys like graduated from high school and we had like a bigger apartment, and I was like, yeah, I get the master bedroom because like I'm the only person that's like sold 100 accounts.
The master bed, dude. I loved that.
Yeah, and
you would always be like, I'm in the master.
Yeah, well, and it was just kind of like, and I had like so much like confidence and like so much like talk, and I was just like, a lot of it was like, I've got to back that up. That kept me going. And then I just also got like pretty hyper obsessive about it through the off season. Like that got me through the rest of the summer. I was like, I just got to back up, just at least continue to do what I'm doing and back up the talk. And then I kind of fell in love with it. And I was like, oh dude, like I want to like go listen to a podcast that like from Alex Hormozy or Sam Taggart, and I want to be reading about sales. It's all I want to talk about. I want to be like predicting like how much is this person going to sell next summer. And like I kind of became obsessed with it, and I think that was a big difference. But also just like taking a step back and being humble and being like, okay, there's like still a lot of people, especially in between, like there's still a lot of people that have like performed to higher levels than me. Like I'm still like, I've only done this for a year or 2 years now, going into year 3. Like there's still so much you can learn. So I think kind of being a sponge and just taking in as much information as you can, or those are the two, I'd say those are the 2 or 3 biggest things. Just like wanting to back up and prove that I was who I said I was, but also being willing to kind of listen and still be learning past the 2 weeks. I remember I overheard this, but you were saying it to Carter at a morning meeting our first year, and you said that the difference between most reps and the high performers are that most people stop learning after 2 weeks, and they'll sell 100 accounts, and they'll sell 200 accounts, or they'll sell 300 accounts for the rest of the time they're doing door-to-door, because they just figure out how to do it. They figure out how to be mediocre or even solid. Like some guys are good and stop learning after 2 weeks. He's like, the guys that are good just, you told Carter, you're like, the guys that are good just keep learning. And I overheard that, and then I saw him just like reading every morning when I would walk into his room, and I was just like, he pushed me a lot too, and you and Jake. But I think that that's one of the big things as well, is just continuing to learn after being a sponge. So yeah, like wanting to back up, prove that I was who I said I was. Those couple of things were the main reasons that I jumped from doing like 300 accounts, 160K in revenue, to over 420K in revenue and 600 accounts, and just like way bigger weeks, days.
And obviously that's all great info, and there's a lot that you can learn out from everyone that's kind of starting up right there. But talk to me, what are we doing in the gym today? Like, what are you doing right now? Like, could you give us a little peek into, and I kind of want to talk a lot about sales psychology. I feel like sometimes we do focus on like a lot of the other topics, but what are you doing right now to like improve your sales psych so you can master more deals or kind of get further with people and stuff like that?
The last couple of days, I kind of took like a couple month like breather where I was like, I'm not going to really think about this. I was just like, I'm tired. I'm just going to like go and do my thing. But I watched a video where a guy talked about how he felt like his golden door, it's like a solar guy or something, but he felt like his golden door was won from January to April before he started knocking. And I saw that, and ever since these last couple weeks, I've just been watching like videos every day, just making like small adjustments to my pitch, nothing major, but it's like, oh, if Sam Taggart says it this way, or if so-and-so says it this way, if Dawson says it this way, I'll talk to Jake when we're at the house, be like, oh, I like what you say there in your pitch, just adding little things here and there, kind of keeping it sharp. Taking notes, like just watching videos is the main thing. And then I think training, I just did my first training with one of my guys, and I'm going to start training with each of them like once or twice a week. And I think that helps a lot, because you start to remember like, oh, this is actually, like, if you're going to teach something, you kind of have to remember how you actually do it. So that's one thing that I think a lot of people don't really do, that I did last summer in between, and that I'm doing now this summer to stay sharp.
Well, one thing that's cool about that, it's kind of like looking for dinosaur bones.
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to find it like at every square inch of like listening to a podcast or tuning into a book, but you'll find something really, really valuable if you just you keep digging and you keep at it.
Yeah, I love that, because it's like you're not going to watch a video and it's going to change your whole world, but you're going to find like small things here and there. Like, I just remember like, for some reason, like, me and Jake were eating lunch the other day, and we were just talking about like stories from the summer, and he kind of talked about, like, it was something as little as him just being like, somebody saying they have, this was just barely like somebody saying they have another company, and he said that his initial response would just be like, oh, heck yeah, and I was like, I like that. Like, it's just like a little thing, and being like, oh, I kind of like how they say this, I kind of like how they respond to this objection. And just improving. Like, you're not going to improve, at some point you're not going to improve 30%, 40% in a month, but if you can just get like 1% better through every period, like small period of time, then it's going to make a big difference. And you just fine tuning.
Yeah, well, and it's similar to sports. Mm-hmm. Like, if you go out and you're trying to like increase your pace on running and stuff like that, like, you really are giving it your all that like first day, but you're going to be way better 16 weeks in when you're gearing up for the marathon. And it's not that you were doing anything crazy different.
Yeah.
You're just showing up each day.
Well, and I think about it too, like, a good like comparison is, they talk about like when somebody starts working out, like the first year they're going to have like those nude gains that like they just come on like way faster. Like, you're going to make way more improvement. But once you're at the point where like somebody like Chyler is, or somebody that's like a bodybuilder, it's going to be a lot, just because you are better, the improvements are going to be smaller, but they're still going to make a massive difference like over time. They're going to be less noticeable over like a week or a 2-week span, but you still just got to keep chipping in at it if you want to like make the big bucks and like be a winner long term, because it really goes down to that, like, who's willing to just keep learning, even when it's like it's harder to make progress once you've excelled at something.
Yeah. And mental health's a big subject that kind of gets pushed out and around right now, and I think this game it's 80% mental. It's so much of it's like how sharp you can keep yourself upstairs. Mm-hmm. What are things that you think are pitfalls that people typically make that prevent them from being successful, and what are you doing to stay sharp to kind of like make sure that, hey, we're not there is no relapses during the summer? I mean, obviously you're someone that like a lot of people look up to in that sense. But what are things that you're like, oh, this is what I'm going to do to keep my mental game kind of like locked in going into next summer?
Again, it's like repeated a lot, but just like having like a reason like why you're pushing yourself is a big thing. Like, it's like, why am I doing this? I think it's got to be a little bit deeper than money. Obviously, it's going to be related to money, but it's like, what do I want to do with that money? Or like, is it going to help my people? But further than that, I think that like keeping your head clear is something, it's not something you can just like prepare for. It's something you just got to do like every single day. I don't think I've like had as much trouble with that, like in terms of like like while I'm knocking like during the season as some people do. Like a lot of people will come in and be like, oh, I hate this, like I don't like this, but I'm just doing it like for money. And like no wonder you're not that good at what you're doing. Like it's not easy, and it's not going to the pool, it's not being out by the beach, but if you can just make a game out of it, if you can just have fun, like if you can just if you can just be positive and find yourself enjoying it, you're going to be so much better. Like the people that are good at this are the ones that are like Stockton, or like Jake was talking about it earlier, where they just find a way to kind of make a game out of it. They enjoy it, and they're not like dreading going to work that day. You're not going to be that good if you talk about how you hate selling pest control and how you don't want to do it. Like you're just not going to be one of the high performing reps at the end of the day.
And one thing that I think, as you were talking, I kind of picked up on is it's a lot less of like focusing on your result as much as it is just like falling in love with the process. And I think a lot of times when you start focusing more on like, hey, what's the outcome of this? Like it prevents the outcome, but also it makes it far less enjoyable.
Yeah, and I've been telling people lately, like I've been asking a lot of people, I'm like, what's like been the best year of your life? And when I think back, like I think like really like my first summer like was like the year I got home from my mission, 2022 was like the best year of my life. And I think so much of that was because of the summer and how much fun I was having. And I'd get a deal and I'd call Garrett and I'd be like, bud, are you even like working at all? Like, what are you doing, dude? Like, how do you only have 4? Like, do you see me? And I would tell him, like, I'd be like, you'll never be me, man. You'll never be me. And I just had so much fun with, like, the people I was around and, like, with the work that I was doing that was a big part of the reason it was. Like, there was other things, but that was a big part of the reason it was the best year that I've ever had.
The results of that summer were always really, really hard to like reveal when it was the end of a competition, because I knew like people would be like, he sandbagged it, or those accounts shouldn't count for this reason, and and like, yeah, and the thing is, it wasn't that people weren't working hard, it was, or like trying to like take things from other people. It was just the passion behind that team was so intense.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, for sure. And I think that like being able to be around good people is been like a huge part of what's made the experience so great. But like not having to be dreading it every day is so big for like being successful. Like I remember when August came around my first year, I was kind of like, oh, like this is gonna like come to an end. All these guys are gonna go on their mission, so that and I'm gonna have to wait like 9 months to do this again. I was happy to have a break, but I was kind of sad. I was like, I want to keep knocking. And like so many people are like, oh, that just isn't me. Like I just don't love it the way that you do. And I'm like, it's like, it's the first couple days I thought it was the worst thing I'd ever done in my life. It's just like, it really is just having a little bit of discipline over your mind and the thoughts that you think, and just being able to keep yourself optimistic.
Well, and find the things you love about it.
Yeah. People
get so good at finding the things they don't like, when you can just be like, oh, like these are the silver linings that I do enjoy.
Yeah.
It's going to be way more fun. Talk to me too on some of the funner moments that have kind of like popped out throughout the years. I mean, I know there's a ton of like funny stories and people that have come through, but what's like a moment that you're like, oh, that's a beauty? Have you seen the video where the guy was, where they're like, what's been your favorite part of playing college basketball? And he starts crying and he's like, just going out to eat. That's what I just thought of. Just going out to eat. But like, which I think like, it was such a combination. The most fun I've had was always being with the people I was around, but also like there's very few things that feel like a seller's high does. Like if you sell 4 houses in a row or whatever it is, 4 or 5 houses in a row, like you feel like you're on the top of the world, and like I'm almost like my mouth's gonna start watering just like thinking about it. But you're like, there's been very few times when I've been that
I don't know if happy is the word. Like, yeah, that I've been that happy as when I've sold well in a day. But then it's the combination of being able to go back and like hang out with your friends, like whether it's like me going back and hanging out with Ryan and Stockton after the day, or you, or hanging out with Jake, or Cade and Garrett, Carter and Scotty, those and McLean, those were the funnest times. It's a combination of like through the whole process, like whether it's going out to eat after, playing Fall Guys till 2 a.m, almost being late to the meeting because we were playing Fall Guys again our first summer, which I wouldn't like recommend. Like probably don't play video games super late at night, but it really was all of it for the most part, especially that first summer. But I'd say in the second one, a lot more of it was that's always the best feeling in the world, to just have a seller's high and to have like a big day.
Was there ever a city that you can think back on that you're like, that was the greenest pasture I've ever been in? Like that was a nice place.
There's been a lot. Like we are in two like really good markets where I feel like most places we go can be like that. Yeah. Like there's better places to sell and there's worse places to sell, but within the markets that we're in, I think pretty much everywhere that we actually take our reps to, everywhere, like anyone who's watching this, anywhere where you're actually going to knock can be like this type of experience. So I don't know if there's anywhere in specific, but like South San Antonio treated everybody like super well in May this year. That's where those 250 weeks, my first 250 weeks when I'd never even sold 30 before came, and like just kind of small town. And it's always fun with those people too, because there's always just funny things that happen. Like when I was having my best selling week ever, I remember this guy opened the door and he's like, do you guys take care of bees? And I was like, not legally. Like, no, we don't really. And I was like, he's like, they attacked my lawn guy. And I was like, those are for sure wasps. He's like, and he's like, no, they're bees. And I was like, let's go take a look at them. And I walk into his backyard, and I just get swarmed by these Africanized killer bees, dude. I get stung like 6 times. And we run into his house, and he's like, let me go write you that check. And it's just funny things that happen. I loved those areas, but there's so many spots that, like first summer in Utah and in San Antonio, that I just got really hot and I loved. I think it was more about my mental space and how I was feeling though than anything else.
How much do you think, how much effort do you feel like you need to put into like guys throughout the summer, like emotionally, like picking them up and for them to be successful? Like this past summer, I know you like led a lot of people and stuff like that. For people watching this that are going in next year as a leader, what do you need to pour into people in order for them to get going?
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing is just being the guy that they want to sell like and that they want to replicate. Honestly, I think compared to other managers in the industry, I think my reps were easier to manage this year than
It's a freaking studs
than other people had. Like I think that I had a really easy experience in terms of managing. Not that it was it's still hard, but like when you have somebody, like I always said, like with like Riley Guest, like I'd never had to worry about him. Like he'd just go drop him off, he'd go sell, maybe call me once during the day and just go. For like Stockton came back to Utah, and I wish I honestly was able to talk to him more, but I didn't have to worry about him at all. It was just like go like put up like 10, he was just going and putting up like 10 accounts a day in May. Like it was insane. And same with like Ryan, like when you have guys like that like you can tell they're going to be like managers themselves one day. Mm-hmm. I don't think that a lot of people have usually like the first year managing experience that I had, where there's so many people in your network that are going to be doing the same thing you are one day. Because the average pest control rep will do it for 1 or 2 or 3 years, but we've got quite a few guys that I was around that are going to be doing it for a lot longer than that. So
yeah, and it's almost like the culture that you set before you even get out there, like just with like picking the right people, is huge. Like you watch all those sport movies when like they cut a bunch of people and stuff like that, mm-hmm. and I feel like those guys you mentioned and yourself, I mean, if anyone was posting cuts on a team, I think you guys would have all been on that top side of making it happen.
Yeah, and there's for sure like hard things, like people that didn't work out that definitely could have. Like there's people that like sold well and they decided they like can handle it. And then I'd say those are the harder moments, but especially with the returning people, they were most of the time were just great. Like Ryan pretty much got the cops called on him every single day. Like, dude, every single day.
Some of the lowest moments this summer, though, was it was like Ryan's in his second area and the cops are coming again. And you're like, and the homes are like $1 million homes. And you're like, how?
You're like, how is another person chasing you on their side-by-side? But he was incredible. Like, one of the toughest kids one of the toughest people I've known. Like, I've known him for forever, but I knew he was going to be successful just because of how tough he was, but he definitely knows how to get on people's nerves, too. He's going to see this and be like...
He can find the hot buttons.
And he always thought that I was lying when I told him, like, I was like, yeah, nobody's called the cops on me this week. Like, not once. Like, nobody's yelled at me this week. And I was like, I'm just better at, like, deflecting it than you are, bud. And he's just like, I don't believe you. You're not telling me the truth.
Yeah, he's like you're just scurrying over to whatever you want. That's how it is, and that's totally not how it is. That's the funny thing too about when you transition into the guy cutting out other people's area, you start to learn that you're like, oh, when Tommy leaves his area, like I'm going to Tommy's area.
Yeah, I'm going back. I'm gonna go sell 10, and then I'm gonna like tell him about it after. Yeah, for sure.
That's so.
But it was never because he couldn't sell there, like or any of them. Like some guys you'll find that like definitely, but like with Ryan or Stockton in particular, it was never because they couldn't sell in a certain area. It was just like with Ryan, it was just because like somebody chased him out. If I ever went back. So I really do think I had a better experience than most people. I think one thing that is big though is you just always got to be like, you can't complain to your reps. You've got to carry most of the weight. And I felt that in my first year. Looking back, there was very little weight on me. Like I was able to go sell 300 accounts because I always had fresh area. The people that were leading me, like you, like the experienced reps were never complaining. They were always talking about, oh, just like you can do it. It's all on you. And I had very little weight on my shoulders. So now going into the second year, while I was carrying 20% of the weight that held my success in my first year, like my 300 accounts, like I was always the one on the doors by myself, but like so much of that was what other people around me were doing to make sure I was successful. Now going into the second year, what you realize is you carry a lot of the weight for other people and helping them. But it's worth it because like they're able to have the same experience. That you just want to give back and give people the same experiences that you had coming up.
100%. One of your abilities, one of your superpowers is your ability to just zero in and focus on something. I'm amazed right now, even like what you're currently, for the past like week, Oak's been like on 1,000 calorie diet, which I think is like insane.
Yeah, I need to eat a little bit more. But
I know, I'm worried. I've been trying to get him to eat something more, but he's like, no, dude, I'm locking.
I gotta burn off all those Torchy's tacos from the summer,
dude. But I think that's an amazing ability that you have, and I think a lot of people need to understand that that's sometimes what it takes to be great, is just to be able to like really push a lot of other things out and zero in on what you gotta go do. I want to give some of the listeners an insight into like your head on a couple of different. I'm gonna ask you a couple rapid fire questions, and I want you to just give me kind of like a simple answer on each of them, and we'll keep them going.
Okay.
Favorite book?
Ooh, Relentless by Tim Grover is the one that's helped me the most. Can I say the Bible or the Book of Mormon? I like those ones. I've spent more time in those than any other book. I need to be a bigger reader than I am, but Relentless by Tim Grover was a big one for me this summer.
Cool. Someone you look up to?
My mom.
Mm-hmm. And I know it's supposed to be rapid fire, but like, what about her?
My mom is just like oh, this is gonna sound so messed up. She's so much smarter than like most. I was gonna say most women are, but most people like in general. She's very bright. She's very balanced. She runs a company that does $11 million in revenue a year. But she's also like the most like reliable person I've ever met in my life. Like, there's nobody that like with any issue I could just call them and be like, help me figure this out. But she does it.
She'd be a fantastic team lead.
Yeah, should be a really good team lead. But yeah, that's the first like answer that came to my head. Like, she balances so much with like big like stake callings. She has the busiest callings in church. She has the busiest job, then like pulls like more weight than most people do in their job by far, like in terms of production. And then she still comes home and like has like a top 1% level family life too. And I think that like, especially like being that reliable, being able to have people lean on you, that's something that I think in any industry, it's gonna pay a lot, not just like fiscally, but also like you're gonna have better relationships, you're gonna make more money. Everything comes when people can rely on you.
I love that. Biggest payday?
The biggest payday so far?
Yeah.
Like the most I've been paid in a day?
No, like how'd you feel? Like what was like like what was the biggest like day you went out and you're like, oh, like I felt the best after that day, or I made the most, or like what was like?
I remember like doing the math on my biggest week and being like, it's probably coming home like on my biggest week did like 35K in revenue and made like however much, and I was like, I was doing the math on it and I was like, wow. Like I was like, some of my friends like that are working like hourly jobs don't make this in a year.
Yeah.
And like especially the team did really well that week too. Like, and I was super tired, but I was kind of like, I was excited about it. I don't know if there's much more to say, but that was just kind of my reaction. I was like, I can't believe that. Like I was like, I can't believe I just made like a third of what I did my whole first summer in a week.
I love that. Yeah, no, those days they're worth chasing, and they also remind me too of like, hey, I gotta have a couple of those, and then the following summer or year, it's to come. Talk to me too on building your team this year. What's some things that you now know going into year 3 that you didn't know in year 2? What's some things you're like, hey, I'm gonna make sure going into my JV season that I'm not gonna make that same mistake that I made in year prior.
Some people are soft. Like a lot of people can't do it, and that's just how it is. Like, so if I'm reaching out to somebody now, like if you're watching this and if I've reached out to you, if I've been like, hey, come sell pest control for me, the first year I would text anyone. But if I'm reaching out to you now, like it's like, I really think you can do this. And this whole year from like any point, no offense to anyone that sees this that I reached out to the first year, a lot of you like could do it too, I'm sure, but like there are like most people are soft and they don't want to go do what it takes. Most people don't want to work hard, and yeah, like if I'm reaching out to you now, it's because I believe that you are a lot more competent, you're a lot tougher, I think that you can be somebody that sells 200, 300, 400 accounts first summer, like goes and makes 50 to 150 grand, like take home pay. Like I don't just reach out to anyone.
Yeah.
To anyone anymore, if that makes sense.
And I think if you are recruiting, you hear that, you need to have that same mindset that it's like chase people that are worth your time and your energy, because those are the people that bring more people. It'll 10x you way faster than trying to 2x getting people that shouldn't or don't want to be there.
Yeah, like I know people with 20 guys that my team was a little bit smaller last year, but like I know people 20, 30 guys that do the same amount of like downline revenue, and it's just like I would rather have 5 or 6 or 10, it'd probably be more 10, 15, 20 killers than like 100 guys that are like really, really subpar and that you just have to kind of like carry weight for all the time.
Yeah.
Like carry so much weight for. Like I said, it was like a huge weight off my back to have guys like Stockton, Ryan, Riley, Dylan this last year.
Yeah, no, assembling your team is a big part of it. What do you want to become this next year? Like, what's something you're like, hey, I would really like to up level and chase that?
I remember when I first started, I saw that you had sold 800 accounts in a 3-month summer, and it was almost like that's like not really like possible. And that's like I want to be that guy. Like if it hasn't already like hit that, like I want to be the guy that goes and sells like 60 or 70 accounts like every week the way that you did, where it doesn't really feel possible for the people coming in. And then I want to like on an extension to that, like be able to show them like that it is, to kind of be able to do the same things. Like I think I just want to be able to go sell as much as like I possibly can. I know that I think that in a lot of ways I'm just scratching like the surface of what I can do in terms of like personal sales, and I just want to like get closer to that, like the peak of my abilities there. So much of that too is for like my guys and to show them like, oh, you can go out and make X amount in a summer. You can go and do this in a day or a week or a month and be able to be the guy. And I think to some level I've done some of that, but to be able to be the guy that can take them there and show them this is step 1, step 2, step 3, and just kind of hold their hand for I don't know if that's the best way to say it, but just be able to take them there too.
And I already think you've done that in such a big way for so many people. And I think I wish I had the same CV that you have currently across the board on all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to see. I think you're going to easily eclipse my best summer this next year.
Yeah, I hope so.
Like account wise, and you've already done it revenue wise, but
yeah,
I'm excited to see that journey and kind of what's going into that. But the other thing I want to just before we hop off, and this is the last thing that I hope a lot of people have stayed along and are catching this end nugget. But Oak, I've done a lot of backhand sheets and I've done a lot of cancels.
Yeah.
And I've been very impressed with how well all of your accounts have stuck, and also how well like the customers had it explained to them.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit on that, like how you've been able to keep your cancels like so low, and we're in an industry now where I feel like people's are like, you hear other companies sometimes they talk about things crazy like 30, 40, 50%, whereas I mean yours are sub 10, which I mean kind of I think a lot of times people put that on the company, but I also think more and more it's more on the rep shoulders.
Yeah, so a couple things on this. Like, first, you've got to be with like a company that's going to take care of like your attrition. Like that's so important. There's so many people that are willing to go and work for companies where those companies' top guys aren't getting paid out on 4 or 5 out of each 10 accounts that they sell. Like if half of what you're doing you're not seeing a dime on, that should be a huge red flag for anyone that's going to like work for a company, especially with us. Like if you're not familiar with the industry, like for every 10 accounts that I sell, only one of them is going to fall off and that I'm not going to get paid on. So like 90% retention compared to 60 or 50% retention on your accounts is just such a massive difference on what you're going to actually take home. So a huge part is who's the company that you're working for, how hard are they going to fight for those accounts and to keep accounts on for your payday, and how good of a service do they do as well. Obviously I don't worry as much about that part. And then from what you can control, like as a rep, like you just got to be very honest. Like you've got to be very upfront with people, not only just like not lying, but just making sure they understand the service very well. I think you'll be more confident as a sales rep if you do that, and you'll sell more too. Like I started to sell better the more I understood like the agreement and how to take people through it. So just being thorough with that part, but being honest, knocking in affluent areas, like don't go knock in like areas that have homes that are under $300,000 or $200,000 homes. You got to make sure the people that have money that you're speaking with, because they're going to be they just know how, they know how to handle their money better. They're going to be way less likely to make the call. My mom makes a lot of money, and she always talks to me. She's like, it's so much of a hassle to even cancel things. Like, I just don't even like I don't even go and do that. Yes. And so you've got to be honest. You've got to be thorough with explaining the contract and what they're getting themselves into. You've got to work for a good company that's going to fight for your accounts and fight to keep the customers happy, so that you make more money, but also so that the people that you're kind of serving them, you're not hurting them when you're going out to sell. Cuban talks about how selling is helping in every sense of the way, and then, obviously knock in wealthy areas where people have money, where people can afford what we're doing. It's pest control. It's nothing crazy. You don't have to be knocking on $1 million homes, $10 million homes, but just don't go to the ghetto and don't go to places that are trailer park homes. And I think that I think that's all there is to it. There's not that much. It's just be in wealthy spots, be honest, and be with good people, be with a good company.
And one thing I'll say, a lot of kids see different stuff on Instagram where they're like, oh, this is like this or this, whatever. Yeah. But if you look at back end sheets, like the cancels affects your contract value. It affects what percentage you're getting paid. It affects every single part of the money that you make.
Yeah.
And so it's not a number to like skirt over lightly, because it's so big on what you actually get to take home and take to the bank.
And I talked to a kid last week, and he came up to me and he told me how much he sold, and he told me how many guys he had, and he told me how much each of them had sold. And he had done more than me, like a little bit more than me in every area. And I made over $100,000 more than he did because his retention wasn't high. I'm not gonna give names or anything, but I just thought that was crazy. And I was like, if you're working, it's like when they talk about how people work from May to June without getting paid because of taxes. You're basically taxing yourself by working in an environment and in a way where half of what you do, or 30% of what you do, or 40% of what you do, even 20% is horrible that you're not getting paid on.
Yeah.
Of the work that you're doing. And so many people look at it like, so many people want to be like a Allen Iverson, when I'd much rather be like Tim Duncan, the guy that won 5 rings. It doesn't have to be as flashy. People want to work for these companies where it's like all the bling and all the fast money and fast cars, fast food and fast women. And I would much rather be Tom Brady than like a Michael Vick. I don't care about, I care a little bit about the flash and looking good, but I would just, you are what your paycheck says you are.
Yeah.
And if you have a lot of cancels, everybody talks about how revenue is the magic number. It's how much revenue you do. I honestly think that it's like that back end in a lot of ways. For me, that's my number one rule in sales, is just you are who your paycheck says you are. And I think that's a Cardone quote or whoever, but it's not your closing ratio. It's not how many deals you sold. It's not how much revenue you did. And all that stuff's important, and all that stuff contributes.
Affects each other, yeah.
But you're not that guy unless you're making the amount of money that people assume you are when they see your numbers too.
No, and you need to understand the entire profit and loss, the entire balance sheet, and see how that all affects. And it's just a really big part. But my hat's off to you. You've done an incredible job at pushing a lot of accounts, pushing high contract values, but also keeping your cancels extremely low. And I think that space that you've entered with those 3 things is a space that I think almost no one else is in. So, Oak, we learned a lot today. It was fun having you on. Love you, brother. Thanks for coming.
For sure.